In the earliest days of the war, Bludgeon was ordered by Megatron to capture Alpha Trion so that the Decepticons could use him to find Metroplex. To this end, he kidnapped Ratchet and organized a hostage exchanged in the Rust Spot, knowing that the Autobots would have to use Alpha Trion to find their way through the area. The plan worked up until that point, but Alpha Trion escaped his clutches thanks to the efforts of Orion Pax, one of the hostage exchangers. As payback, Bludgeon had him strapped to a shuttle programmed to crash into the nearest settlement, and though Orion tried to stall for time by telling him he'd go far in life only to overreach and become a symbol of failure, Bludgeon didn't really care and launched his captive into the sky. Following Metroplex's departure from Cybertron, Bludgeon continued his hunt for the Titan using the starship Empyreon. One of his subordinates, Thundercracker, tracked their prey to a desolate planetoid inhabited by some pesky aliens, so Bludgeon commenced planetary bombardment to get them out of the way. The assault attracted the attention of a group of Autobots who rammed and crippled the Empyrean, forcing Bludgeon to abandon ship and fight them until Thundercracker reported that Metroplex was nowhere to be found. As the Decepticons retreated to continue their hunt elsewhere, Bludgeon had Thundercracker transferred out of his unit for seemingly having led them into an Autobot trap. During the war, Bludgeon formed an army of deviants and half-forms, an event that would be remembered as one of the most horrible things that the Decepticons ever did. Bludgeon was the leader of a team of Decepticons, including Iguanus, Finback, Skullgrin, and Bombburst, who were assigned by Megatron to look into what Shockwave's various projects were when he disappeared. Megatron also sent Soundwave to spy on them. During this time, Bludgeon discovered Shockwave's work on Regenesis. Eventually, however, they discovered the remains of Thunderwing, the Decepticon scientist who became the cause of the Cybertronian cataclysm. Bludgeon came to believe that Thunderwing was an avatar of the apocalypse, and became bent on restoring the wasted Cybertron to its former glory by resurrecting him. He and his team of Decepticons believed that, in reawakening Thunderwing and turning him loose, the mass sacrifice of worlds would allow the rebirth of Cybertron. They also delved into the outlawed, a word I don't know, polydermal grafting experiments pioneered by Thunderwing in an attempt to create supershells of their own. In 1984, they went to Earth to extract a load of Ultra Energon, establishing a base within Mount St. Helens. Soundwave naturally followed them. He eventually came to them asking for a cut of their profits, believing that they meant to sell the Energon, but when he realized that they meant to resurrect Thunderwing, he tried to stop them. They used one of Shockwave's devices to lock him in his alt mode, then caused a volcanic eruption and returned to Cybertron via an orbital bounce. 23 years later, Jetfire and the Technobots, detecting the Ultra Energon from orbit, went to investigate and were taken by the cult, planning to use them as raw materials for their shells. Bludgeon wanted Jetfire to witness Thunderwing's awakening, to make him see that Thunderwing had been right to experiment, but Jetfire eventually annoyed him too much. Connecting his mind to an Axis cradle that controlled Thunderwing's blank neuroscape, Bludgeon sent Thunderwing to destroy Nebulos, then engaged the autodrive to inspect his own shell's progress. When Optimus Prime and the Wreckers attacked Bludgeon's base on Cybertron by surprise, Iguanus escaped to the biographed chamber to find Bludgeon, only to find the cult leader having donned full polydermal armor. However, in Bludgeon's rush, the shell was not mentally aligned, causing a psychic backlash that took down the Decepticon before the Wreckers even found him. It was unclear at the time whether Bludgeon's mind survived, though it was believed to be in torment if it had. Prime felt that he got off lightly for having unleashed Thunderwing. After the defeat of Thunderwing, Bludgeon was transferred to Garrus 9, where Fortress Maximus stored his extracted spark in the Rig. However, during Nemesis Prime's attempt to bring the expansion forth, Bludgeon was reactivated inside his cell by G-Axis to stop Jetfire from attempting to take control of Thunderwing. The remote-controlled Bludgeon sliced its way into Jetfire's lab, and G-Axis planned to have it kill the Autobot. However, multiple fronts of Autobot resistance at each Negacore kept G-Axis from focusing his full attention on controlling Bludgeon, and he was forced to abandon his efforts to kill Jetfire. Cloudraker and Fastlane arrived and quickly disarmed the now inert Bludgeon, and Jetfire borrowed the Pretender's sword to go aid Optimus Prime in his fight against Nemesis Prime. Bludgeon's body was presumably returned to confinement afterwards. Somehow freed from Garrus 9 and again in possession of his full faculties, such as they were, Bludgeon was given command of the Torment, a Decepticon warship crewed by the Monstructor 6. Still displaying cultish fanaticism and a cruel streak and a mile wide, he urged his crew onward in pursuit of the maverick Autobot Hot Rod. Downing the Autobot's shuttlecraft, Bludgeon had his ship land and crew disembark to sacrifice Hot Rod for the greater purpose of restoring Cybertron. With the untimely arrival of the crew of the battleship Trion, Bludgeon ordered his acolytes to form Monstructor and crush the Autobots. However, his forces were put to rout by a precise shot from Perceptor's sniper rifle, which hit the vulnerable connecting joints of the large combiner. Appearing to realize what he was up against, Bludgeon sounded the retreat. In actuality, he was leading the pursuing Trion to Cybertron, where several Decepticon battlecruisers staged an ambush, sending the Autobot craft plummeting to the planet below. With Bludgeon still in command, the Torment later arrived in the nick of time to rescue Shockwave from the Decepticon Justice Division, who opted to retreat rather than face him and the Monstructor 6. Several years later, learning that G-Axis had returned and was the captive of Hardhead and his crew, Bludgeon, following the orders of Shockwave, put into motion a plan to liberate him. Taking Monstructor to the planet, Ardruria, man, it's always hard to say some of these things, Ardruria, he sent out a phony distress call that lured Hardhead's crew, joined now by Orion Pax, formerly Optimus Prime by this point in the comics, to this frozen world. While Monstructor kept Hardhead and Orion busy, Bludgeon penetrated their ship easily, cutting his way through Garnak and Wheelie and liberating G-Axis. Together, the villains set off to track down the other planets that had been targeted by the Regenesis program crafted by Shockwave, who had been G-Axis's greatest student. Bludgeon arrived on the planet LV-117, which, thanks to the Regenesis missile that had landed there, existed in a constant state of chronal flux. After they both separately came in contact with the time machine aboard Turmoil's stolen ship, Bludgeon and Orion Pax were sent adrift across different eras of the planet, moving in opposite directions through time in relation to each other. Bludgeon managed to steal the device that allowed LV-117's inhabitants to control their planet's journey through time and slew Wheelie's friend Varta in the process, before he and G-Axis escaped aboard Turmoil's ship. The villains tracked down Waspinator, one of Bludgeon's old Titan Hunter subordinates, who had once managed to control a Titan. After duping Orion Pax into raising a deactivated Titan on Gorlem Prime, they used Waspinator to seize control of it. The Titan's space bridge was used to teleport it back to Cybertron, and G-Axis's group followed in their own ship. They arrived on Cybertron to join with Shockwave shortly thereafter. Bludgeon watched silently as G-Axis prepared to undertake Shockwave's master plan. The completion of the chronal drive came just in time for the invasion of Cybertron by Shockwave's allies, the Ammonites. Good God, I'm going to have to do a video on the Ammonites too. Bludgeon began expressing some small doubts of the plan as he came to realize that his master, G-Axis, was actually subservient to Shockwave. Still, he remained at their side, striking out against the Autobots and Decepticons who invaded Crystal City to stop Shockwave's plan. He struck down Waspinator and laughed at Skids and his copied Metallicado moves. As he prepared to execute Ultra Magnus, however, Bludgeon was blasted by Optimus Prime, as the Autobot leader and his team re-emerged from the dead universe. Bludgeon was last seen as Ultra Magnus checked the fallen warrior for signs of life, but ultimately left him behind. Managing to escape from the Crystal City before it was consumed into a singularity, Bludgeon set up residence in the Sea of Rust, and in the following months he discovered that the hotspot in Allion had reignited with sparks. He proceeded to perform horrifying experiments upon some of them, including placing some of the sparks within the remains of fallen sweeps and mutant turbofoxes, as well as messing with the corrupted energon emanating from the fallen Trypticon. Upon discovering a convoy protected by the Dinobots, which contained sparks from the colony of Caminus, Bludgeon set some of his sweeps upon them, but when they were driven off by a second group, he instead had them followed. Taking advantage of an attack from the Badgeless, Bludgeon attacked the truck himself, destroying it, barricade, and the sparks inside. Easily disregarding the attack from Strafe, Bludgeon hurled her into the corrupted energon, curious to see what it would do as it began mutating her. However, the equally distraught Swift, upset at Barricade's death, damned him for robbing himself of his future by destroying the sparks. Disgusted with the amoral scientist, she pushed Bludgeon over a cliff into a pool of the contaminated energon, only narrowly saved from joining him when Slug caught her by the wrist. Doubting that Bludgeon had perished, Strafe and the Dinobots decided to seek him out and make sure that he suffered. Bludgeon did indeed survive his plunge, altering his outer shell and putting a new plan into action. Having discovered that Trypticon was in fact a Titan, Bludgeon intended to use the beast's internal space bridge to conquer the galaxy in the name of Cybertron. He used the corrupted sweep sparks to reactivate Trypticon's brain module, which he then took control of using a replica of the Void Scepter, said to have created the Titan itself. Next, he raided the Allion Hotspark, killing the Badgeless guarding it and only leaving Sandstorm alive before harvesting the remaining sparks. Intending to use Trypticon's energon to corrupt them into an army under his control. As he demonstrated Trypticon's power by having the monster march on Iacon, Bludgeon was confronted by the Dinobots, and while he had expected Sandstorm to keep them busy, Sandstorm instead joined forces with them and destroyed the Void Scepter. His control over Trypticon broken, Bludgeon found himself forcibly teleported out of the vengeful Titan, who melted his body with a powerful beam from his mouth. Unbeknownst to most, however, he survived, though not without grievous injuries, including losing most of his limbs, and was secretly taken into custody by Starscream, who held an interest in his spark experiments. Starscream eventually locked the crippled Bludgeon up in a back room and gave him a repaired Void Scepter, with which he would carry out Starscream's bidding. After the Seeker had lent Slug to Optimus so they could hunt for the missing protoforms, he had Bludgeon control the Dinobot via the Scepter. When Slug reunited with the Dinobots, Bludgeon had him attack his friends, to make ready for the coming of his master. Starscream eventually caught wind of this and shattered the Scepter, though Bludgeon tried to goad the Seeker into killing Optimus. Starscream refused to bite and reminded Bludgeon of his house arrest. Though disappointed at how things turned out, Bludgeon was confident that these events would not impede his master's return. Anticipating a large existential threat, Starscream eventually repaired Bludgeon and sent him out into the galaxy so that he could gather all the Decepticons who had failed to return to Cybertron following the war's end. Bludgeon readily accomplished this task, forming the Decepticon Vengeance Division, a massive fleet of Decepticon capital ships capable of destroying whole planets with ease. Though Starscream and Shockwave each believe they commanded Bludgeon's loyalty. Bludgeon's fetish for the apocalypse had already led him to pledge loyalty to Unicron. When the Chaos Bringer began attacking the Cybertronian colonies, Starscream dispatched the DVD and G Nebula 89 to destroy him. With Bludgeon duping Starscream and his troops into believing Unicron could be felled by their firepower and a dud stasis web. In reality, Bludgeon had brought the fleet to Unicron as a part of their plan. After its combined firepower failed to damage the monster planet, Unicron unleashed the Maximals onto Bludgeon's World Sweeper, warping the Decepticons into Maximal-like forms. Unicron then teleported to Cybertron, bringing the DVD and its converted Decepticon crews along to act as his heralds. As Unicron began attacking Cybertron, Bludgeon commanded his ship to open fire on Carcer, crippling the Titan. His attack drew the attention of Victorian, who attempted to kill him and destroy his ship. Anticipating this, Bludgeon unleashed Monstructor, who defeated the Camion Combiner. Once Unicron had destroyed Cybertron, the fleet quantum jumped to Jupiter, Bludgeon loudly proclaiming their loyalty to Unicron as the fleet destroyed Sanctuary Station. After Shockwave had located the errant talisman, he contacted Bludgeon, ordering him to have the device retrieved and used to slay Unicron. Bludgeon chose that moment to inform Shockwave of his loyalty to Unicron, dispatching his troops to retrieve the device, only so it would pose no threat to Unicron. When Starscream, Thundercracker, and Skywarp charged the fleet, Bludgeon casually ordered Monstructor to slay the Decepticon leader, before Metroplex and Trypticon space-bridged in and unleashed an army on the DVD. Caught off guard, the DVD fell to the Titans with only Bludgeon's ship surviving the attack. As the World Sweeper descended into Earth's atmosphere, Shockwave tried to reassert control over Bludgeon to no avail. As the warship rained destruction on the eastern seaboard of the United States, it was boarded by the Dinobots who stormed the bridge. Though managing to slay Snarl and Sludge, Bludgeon soon found himself locked in mortal combat with Slug. Their battle caused Bludgeon to lose control of his Void Scepter, sending the World Sweeper crashing into the White House and killing both Bludgeon and Slug in the process.